Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Yeah, we got now. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, not bad.
Great to see you, Jason, out. 49ers won yesterday over the Eagles, so Jason right now is face down in an alley.
If he's face down in the alley, I don't know what I am right now. I mean, the Saints fans were literally booing Derek Carr off the field every drive, and we came back and still lost.
Yes. So let's start with Florida State. Penn State, by the way, Penn State Ole Miss, Peach Bowl. My only question about Ole Miss going into the process was how far they would take teams in. When Florida State, I had a feeling when Florida State won, but it was like
not a convincing
such a
victory.
struggle. I remember Dick Girardi texted me on Saturday night. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Michigan will be 1, Washington will be 2, Texas will be 3, Alabama will be 4." So I got the 4 right. I said Florida State will be out. I said that'll send Penn State to the Peach Bowl, and I said it opens the door for Ole Miss. Right? The one thing I did not want for Penn State, I originally said last week when we all thought, I said Tulane or SMU. Well, I didn't want Liberty. And that's nothing to do with Liberty. It has zero to do with Liberty, the university, Jamie Chadwick, the football team. You get nothing. Oregon is in a no-win position.
No.
Oregon, right? If they win, they're supposed to win. If they lose, oh my God, what happened? Right? I'm sorry, that's a no-win game. And as I pointed out with the Big 12 scenario this year, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, they went 8-28. When you have to play that kind of schedule every single week, and that's not a Big Ten SEC schedule, okay? Every single week, okay, you can get up for a game. You can get up for a game. Boise State could get up for a game. UCF could get up for a game. Right? Tulane last year got up for a game. It's when you have to do it every single week. There's a real separation.
There's a bar.
Right? But Liberty will be up for the game. Oregon will be like, what are we doing here? Right? So that's what I didn't want. And that's when I told, because Jack didn't ask me about it, but Dick texted me, because Dave Sims, who does the Marin, I know Dave and I have known each other for 35, 40 years. Dave Sims wanted to know about whether the coordinator was going to be, Andy was going to be coaching in the game, and I said no. And Dick got a hold of me about that. And I said, oh yeah, I'll tell Dave. And I said the door's open for Ole Miss because it'll extend the number of at-large teams they'll take because Louisville's now out. That was my point, that Louisville was out as an automatic.
So now they add one more in.
They can add one more. I said that opens the door for Penn State to play Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl, and that was Saturday night. So I really thought, I thought it was going to happen. This is a great scenario for Penn State.
Yeah.
You're playing a terrific opponent that had a lot of ways the same kind of season you did. They lost a tough game at Alabama. They lost a tough game at Georgia. But that's it.
They're a good team.
They're a good team with a quality quarterback in Jackson Dart. Good running game in Judkins. Right, Harris is a good receiver. Transfers all over the lot on defense. Of the top 25 players on defense, 21 of the 25 are transfers on that defense. They play a 3-3-5. Okay.
Wild.
Well, but that gives you flexibility with your linebackers. You can move it up and play one on the outside, play a 4-2. You can bring 2 on the outside and play it like a 51. That's not quite an Oklahoma defense unless you want to cheat a safety up and make it a 5-2. You can do that. So you can be multiple as to what you do with a 3-3-5. That's how they play because they play nickel all the time. And Lane Kiffin is obviously a very smart coach, especially offensively. They're terrific with their script. They have scored on 7 of their opening 12 drives this year, 6 touchdowns and a field goal. Other than that, I don't know much about these guys. Okay, so
Florida State. I want to.
So let's get to Florida State. I just want to establish that out of the gate. Florida State. The roots of Florida State and what happened to them go all the way back to that fraud alliance led by Kevin Warren Jim Phillips, and George Kliavkoff.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to have the 12-team playoff this year.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have mattered. The only complaint would have been that Florida State would have had to play the opening weekend, but they would have been playing at Doak Campbell Stadium. Oh, and by the way, they would have been playing Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's who they would play. They'd have played Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Right? Penn State would have played at Ohio State. Right? And to be honest with you, I would have relished the rematch. I would have relished it.
Mm-hmm.
Really would have. And then if you won, you would have played Washington and Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, Washington in a bowl game. I'm sorry. It would have been in a bowl game. Okay. So Florida State is penalized because they are not the same Florida State team that went through the first 10.5 games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because they lost Jordan Travis, who was, without question, a quality college quarterback.
And I want to stop there for a second. So this is where the argument, I guess, not devolves, but where it becomes like an actual discussion is the team, and this has been the main talking point, is Travis. He tweeted out at 1:00 just after it got announced yesterday. Devastated, heartbroken, in so much disbelief right now. I wish I broke my leg earlier in the season so y'all could see this team in much more than the quarterback. I thought results matter, 13-0, and this roster matches up against anyone across any of the top 4 rankings. I'm so sorry, go Noles. The fact that this kid had to come out and say, I wish I broke my leg sooner, is an issue.
No, that's...
Because that's the thing. The only difference really is that he's not there now. And they still have a really good team. I get the whole, well, how can you leave Alabama and Texas out? Florida State did literally everything they could. They scheduled LSU and beat LSU week, 1?
Yeah, that was on a neutral field in Orlando.
They scheduled them and beat them.
Right.
They beat Duke, who was ranked at the time. They beat good teams across the board. They did everything they were meant to do.
Right.
They won their championship against Louisville, a pretty good team.
It's all well and good. Now I'm going to say, but the roots of this are the alliance. They should have the 12-team thing this year. They fouled it up. Those 3 guys fouled it up. Kevin Warren, Jim Phillips, George Kliavkoff. They have fouled the whole thing up. Okay? Penn State would be in the playoff this year, but they fouled it up.
Yeah.
I don't get when it happened, I said it was a fraud. So this isn't like 20/20 hindsight here. Over here in the back. Okay, the day it happened, I said, "This makes no sense. This is a fraud."
Nope.
Right? George Kliavkoff. We don't need anything written down. A handshake's good enough. Like, oh yeah, really? Well, right now, like he's out of a job. Okay. That's where the roots of this happened. Right now, as for the selections, right, I'm going to throw this out to you. I'm voting in the room.
Okay.
Okay. This is me voting in the room. Washington 1, Florida State 2. Now, I said it was going to be. I told Dick, I said this is what I think they're going to do: Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama. So I got that right. But if I'm voting, I'd have voted Washington 1, Florida State 2, Texas 3, Alabama 4. Why? Because of everything surrounding Michigan. Okay, I've got enough there to say, I'm sorry, no.
That also would have been a big statement to make.
Sure it would.
And I think
it would have.
I think they were just avoiding making a statement of some capacity.
They always avoid making a statement. They have always avoided making a statement. 2016, when Washington got in over Penn State, who played the better non-conference schedule? Penn State did. Who played the better conference schedule that year? Penn State did. Who won 9 in a row at the end? Penn State did. They were a better team than Washington. Then when they did play a year later, Penn State won. Oh, gee, what a surprise. Right? Pretty much the same teams. But I'm saying their non-conference schedule in 2016 was Idaho, Portland State, and Rutgers.
Hey, don't hate on Portland State.
Right? I'm saying, but that was their non-conference schedule. They told everybody then your non-conference schedule doesn't matter. Really? That's your statement? Now, I know they change the over every year, but the Michigan thing, to me, is so bothersome. So bothersome. I'd have been the person in the room voting no, and and telling everybody, I can't vote for this team.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Yeah.
Sorry. And again, if the Michigan people don't like it, fine. Why bother having rules?
Mm-hmm.
Why bother having rules? And not only that, it appears, based on evidence, that the problem is there's evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. There's evidence. This is not like throwing darts. There's evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm sorry. There's three things going on. One has something to do with Michigan football, but doesn't have anything to do with Michigan football. Yeah. Okay, that's the deal in January with the former offensive coordinator. Okay, he just happens to be an employee, so you can't hold that. Right? What an individual is trying to sneak around and allegedly do. I mean, and those are all allegations. Right? So but there are two others that are legit. I'm sorry, that's the team you're putting in and you're making them the number one seed? Really? I'm just saying that's how I would have voted. Okay? Michigan would have been the number 5. They'd have been out. And I'd made the statement, I'm sorry, too many allegations surrounding the program. Can't do it. Right? And people would have looked at me like, they probably would have burned the house down. But that's how I feel about it. Okay? What they did was wrong. Right? And it was blatant. And there's evidence of it. Okay? And in other words, what's your statement to everybody? You can do this and there's no accountability? And please do not tell me, oh, you can't do that to the young people. You're telling me the young people didn't know for 2.5 years. They never got out. The young people knew, right? It was that cloak and dagger that nobody in the building knew. Really? Wow, it's quite a scheme you got going there. But that's just me. That's to the side.
But back to the Florida State portion of it.
Well,
I get that this is the final year of the 4, and that going forward it'll be bigger and there won't be as many issues, and they'll be very there'll be issues.
The issues are going to be 13 through 16.
But at least that you can at least have a discussion about. But you look at what Florida State has done. They did literally everything. There was always this thing of they're a Power 5, they're in a Power 5 conference and they went undefeated and they beat everybody. And they're only missing a single player. Yeah, he's their best player, but there was this thing of we want the best teams in. So you're saying Georgia's not one of the best teams?
What was the ACC's record against the SEC this year?
What was it?
ACC won it.
Yeah,
they had more wins over the SEC than they had actually. It was something I don't know, 5 or something.
What SEC school had the best out of conference win compared to
best non-conference win?
I'd bet.
I don't think they had any quality
I'd put
non-conference wins.
On its own, the LSU victory for Florida State beats everything that the SEC had.
No question.
And
the SEC, the weird thing about it is that the SEC had a good year this year, and I'm sorry, you just can't keep screaming we're the SEC all the time. Guess what? If you're all right, here's been my complaint about the SEC for years.
Let's do it.
All right. And it's pure and simple. First of all, they are highly intelligent as to what they do. They manipulate this in such a way that's beautiful. And by the way, let's remember, they have one quality. These are all quality teams. I am not in any way telling you Georgia last year wasn't good. They were great. 2 years ago, Georgia was great. Okay? It's not like some of these Alabama teams have not been great teams. Okay? So I'm not saying that.
The Alabama Invitational, Steve.
Right? But I'm saying, okay, the teams that have won earned their wins. But let's start with this. And this is part of the problem of the other conferences, what they do. But they play 8 conference games. They play 4 non-conference games. Meanwhile, you've got the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the Big 10 all playing 9. So you got to put yourself out in the line against a tougher opponent than Tennessee Chattanooga.
Citadel.
Well, Tennessee Chattanooga happened to be Alabama's next to last regular season game.
Yes.
Right.
Tough opponent.
Well, no, but which is the next part I'm going to get to. Right? So you do that, and they schedule it beautifully. They kind of move it around. Tennessee plays Florida like the second or third game of the year. Right? Where every week it looks like there's a big SEC game. It makes you think that they're playing big games all the time. Well, they aren't. And then they get to this next to last weekend. In the next to last weekend, Alabama played Tennessee Chattanooga. Georgia played, what nondescript team did Georgia play? Or they may have played a conference game because they played Georgia Tech at the end.
Georgia Tech at the end. They played earlier in the season UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB.
Yeah, they played them early because they had the Georgia Tech game at the end, so they had to play a conference game. But they do this all the time. I mean, I'm going through the Ole Miss schedule. I mean, Ole Miss, the week before they played, Mississippi State played Louisiana Monroe. Right? Because, again, they try to schedule that game before they have a bigger game. I got that. I have to check the dates because they had to play, Thanksgiving night, I think, against Mississippi State, so they may have had a short week, or maybe it was 10 days. I don't know how many days off they had in between. I'd have to look it up. But they do this all the time with their schedules, and they make you think like, oh my goodness. I mean, right? And you can't keep living off that. Every team and every year is an entity unto itself. And this is one of the biggest failures that we have in media when it comes to evaluating teams. It's a huge failure in media. Well, right? And what happens is you have people that make their predictions in the preseason, and they write them in pen. How about light pencil? It's a journey.
Put on a whiteboard.
Every team is different. Okay, Georgia. How many times did I say during the season that this may be Kirby Smart's best coaching job? I said that, right?
Yeah, multiple times.
Why? Because they're not as talented as they were. Yet he's doing a good job. They had to come from behind a couple times. He's got a new quarterback, right? He's got a lot of guys in the NFL, but he did a great job with that team this year, right? Nick Saban did a great job with his team. No offense, they're not as good, right? You watch Milroe throw the ball, it's Nolan Ryan, right? Sure, some of them are right on target.
But some of them are.
This is Nolan Ryan with the Mets. Okay, not Nolan Ryan with the Angels. Okay, this is Nolan Ryan with the Mets. Like, oh my God, it's 102 miles an hour, and when it's over the plate, woohoo, wow! And then he'll throw a sideline one like, well, the guy in the third row was open.
I believe you're talking about the football fallacy, the soccer fallacy of row Z, where it just keeps going.
And he's a great runner. Right? And it's not like he can't make some throws, because he does make some throws. And is he better now than he was in September? No question. No question. But he's still, whatever. Carson Beck is good. Is he great? No, he's good. All right? Milroe is really good. He's not great. Okay. A great runner. And as a thrower, better than he was in September. Give him all the credit in the world, but still makes a couple throws. You sit there and go, well, that was interesting.
By the way, Ole Miss played on the 18th against UL Monroe and the 23rd against Mississippi State. So a 5-day layoff, 5 days between games.
Okay, 5 days between games. So that means they play them on a...
They play them Saturday. On the 23rd.
Saturday, 23rd, okay. So, I mean, that's for them, that's smart scheduling when you have that kind of turnaround on a Thursday night. I would have made the same scheduling move.
Yeah. But
my problem has always been that the SEC will schedule a game right when they're voting. And I've always said, you want to play Tennessee Chattanooga? Okay, now say Alabama had been second. Let's just say they were second. They were having a great year, undefeated, whatever. I'd have made them fifth that week. And have them, what are you doing? Who would have been fifth? What are you talking about? Excuse me, we're voting right now. That's an insult to us voting.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also this
Now, the next week, if they
yeah.
beat now Auburn, then I'd vault them
Bump
back
them, yeah.
up again. But for 1 week, I'd make the statement like, you can't be scheduling like that when we're voting.
There's also this weird fallacy of like, oh, but they played such great teams, and like Auburn is a great team. They were 6-6.
I know.
Right. They were okay.
Yep.
What's your point here?
Right.
Oh, but they beat Auburn and they beat Florida and South Carolina. These teams aren't like they aren't what they were.
Which gets me to my next point, right? And this is what I made 1,000 times, so we'll make it 1,001.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, Georgia is going to play at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M has been in the conference 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be the first time ever that Georgia has played at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of conference is this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where you finally play a football game at the other guy's place 13 years in?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they've been in the conference 3 to 5 years and they just haven't been able to schedule. I got that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That can happen. 13? This is, and Texas A&M will have Mike Elko will be the coach. But this is what they do. They manipulate schedules.
Mm-hmm.
You already play everybody in your division, 6. You get one designated crossover.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Alabama always plays Tennessee third Saturday in October.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That preserves a rivalry. It gives you one other crossover game because you're only playing 8. One? That's it? So they had to beat, this year in their division, they had to beat a depleted Florida team,
Mm-hmm.
a depleted Tennessee team.
Mm-hmm.
They had to beat South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They had to beat Missouri, which is very good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unexpectedly very good,
But a good team.
very good team.
Missing Vanderbilt. 2-10 powerhouse.
Vanderbilt, right? Which is okay. Let's face it.
2-10 powerhouse.
That tells you everything about James. He made them relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, this is who you're This is okay. This is the SEC East may not be the Big Ten West.
It's similar.
But okay, the Big Ten West is worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no getting around it.
Yeah.
But the SEC West and the Big Ten East. Now you're talking about, well, okay, now that's a gauntlet. You got to play LSU. You got to play Texas A&M. You got to,
Bama, Ole Miss, Auburn.
Right,
like
Mississippi State.
Most years, Auburn's good.
Right. You've got, like Mississippi State's like Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not bad.
Arkansas has had some years where they're good.
Arkansas has had some years.
Darren McFadden.
Darren McFadden. I mean, they've had some.
But it's just the fact that there's this like, but they beat Auburn and Texas A&M and like those were some real tough games. But so you're saying that Florida State beating LSU wasn't a tough game,
right?
And like that's where my
right. But Duke is a good team, not a great team. And if I remember, Leonard left the game, okay, because Leonard got hurt in the game. Duke's a good team, not a great team.
Mm-hmm.
Just even with Leonard, they're a good team, not a great team. Florida State did not get the benefit of playing Notre Dame this year. Mm-hmm. They won at Clemson, right, and they had to come from behind to do it, and then they won it in overtime. Right, watch that game. Good, tough, hard-fought game. Travis played really well in it. LSU early, good, hard-fought, but they had beat LSU last year too.
Yeah, and I'll chuck in. They had to beat Louisville without their quarterback. Right. Like, that's still a tough game. Louisville's been real good this year.
Louisville is good. They are not great. I had a real problem with them. Their only win was over Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Legitimate win. And that was one of those where I sat back and went, okay, you can't have the Duke-Notre Dame effect. And I said that last week on the show. You're sitting there, Duke, for example, if you beat them in basketball, we're 6-6. I think we need to rank them. Wake Forest is now. They beat Duke. Right? Although I say this, Georgia Tech just beat Duke.
A lot of teams just beat Duke.
Yeah.
Duke just lost a lot of games in a row.
Yes, they have, as a matter of fact. But you get credit for beating Duke. You get credit in college football for beating Notre Dame. Again, that's like this is something I was talking to my class about today. We are very much in a fantasy football world. And I said, to do the job well, I said, I said, it's great to play fantasy football. I said, have fun with it. I said, but you can't base what your observations off fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about the Bland kid for
Deron Bland
for the Cowboys.
4 pick sixes, 5 pick sixes, whatever it is. Yeah.
Which is a record. Never happened. All the credit in the world that he's done that. But did you watch the Seattle game?
Mm-hmm.
They attacked him relentlessly.
It's the exact same thing Trayvon Diggs had, where it's like, oh, but he's got these interceptions. Yeah, but he's getting torched for 200 yards a game.
That's what I told him. I said, and then there's Diggs. And the class was, no, Diggs is. I said, no, Diggs is a liability.
Yeah, Diggs got torched for 200 a game, but has 2 picks. So it's a home run. It's a home run type of defense.
Take a long, hard look. I said, sometimes at the guys that don't have stats.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm talking about secondary play now. The guys that don't have stats. Ask yourself why they don't have stats.
Yeah.
I said, don't sit there and go, well, because Diggs has 11 picks. I said, no. I said, the guy that doesn't have stats may be the guy that's actually covering people or they don't want to throw in his direction.
I'll give you the example. Darrelle Revis Island. There was one year where he gave up a total of 200 yards to receivers throughout the entire season, had 1 interception. And I forget who it was on ESPN, was like Revis had a bad year. He wasn't a good corner. He had 1 interception. Everyone's like, he went up against Andre Johnson and then Julio Jones. And he gave up throughout 16 games, 200 yards.
Sometimes the guys don't have stats. I can't vote for him. He has no interceptions.
We're stat hunting.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, I can't just sit there and give you the conference stats and the top 3 guys that lead the league in interceptions. Okay, now there may be a guy that has a lot of interceptions. You look at it and go, you know what? And I watched him. He's really good.
Like, what's the cornerback's name? Who was it? Derek Stingley for the Texans.
Sure.
He's played great and then made 2 insane plays against their game yesterday and had 2 interceptions.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Right, that happens, okay, which is great. But that's the kind of guy you should be looking at, right? You should always look at who leads the league in interceptions. I mean, you always should take a look at that. Or
you're doing something right.
Or conference. You're doing something right. But at the same time, then you really have to watch the games. Like, are they throwing in this guy's direction because this guy over here is really good? See, that's what made Kalen King. Let's go to college level. Last year, Kalen King so invaluable. They weren't throwing at Joey Porter Jr., but they were throwing at him. And guess what? They couldn't beat him. Okay? But he got all the action over there. So you can't, okay, I was telling them today, I said, you can't base everything you see, especially defensively, on stats. I said, this is not a fantasy league. I said, you can't do that. I said, why were the Seahawks throwing at him? Because he's actually a liability over there. Okay? Why aren't they throwing to the other guy? Why? Okay, they're not throwing over at Gilmore. So why aren't they throwing at Gilmore?
It's almost like Gilmore's a good cornerback.
Right? They don't want to throw at Gilmore because guess what? He's still, even though he's a
lesser version of himself when he was the Patriots.
Okay? He's still good enough where I don't really feel like messing with him. I'm going to mess with this guy. Right? Same thing when Diggs was out there. Okay? People were throwing. He got all credit for getting 11 in one season. That's a phenomenal year. But
there was a reason they kept throwing at him all season.
Because guess what? They thought he was the weak link. I said, everything's about matchups. All right, so now back to Florida State. Tremendous defense. Tremendous defense. Coleman's really a good wideout.
Trey Benson is a good running back.
Terrific running back. I felt bad for the
Jordan Travis.
No, I feel bad for him, obviously. But the backup who had the concussion, Rodemaker, Tate Rodemaker. You know what I admire about him? He was Mike Norvell's first recruit. He's still there. He stayed. He went through and backed up this guy and the whole thing. And you notice, and Travis has been so supportive of him. He said, this is your time. All right. And then this happens, and then he couldn't play in the game. So they go with the third string, the true freshman. I mean, that would be the equivalent of if Penn State gets into a game like that and suddenly, with all due respect, Jackson Smolik's quarterbacking. That'd be the same story. Right? And, I know what the committee's looking at, but I'm just not big on, just because you're from the SEC, right, and you don't have a College Game Day, which I did watch College Game Day on the plane, flying from Detroit back to Orlando, because when else was on? Right? That's the first time I watched it all year. They are not great at calling out certain things that I think are wrong. Now, they did debate the Michigan situation, and Desmond Howard, of course, went to the wall. Okay, great, I got you. I got it. But they've never called out the SEC on how they schedule. Everything the SEC does is great and awesome. This whole mantra of it just means more. Do you think, no offense, but do you think at Alabama or Georgia that they run around saying it means more? No, I'm not joking about that. They are not big into this it means more thing. They're about like it means more to us. All right? It's the rest of the conference that says it means more. Like middle down. What's next Wednesday? The 12th? 13th? Sure. Now I asked to be on Sirius XM talk show. Okay, good enough.
Well, dang.
No. It doesn't matter. It's the same stuff all the time. What do you think of the bowl game? What do you think about this? But me, I'm sitting in the room. I would not have put Michigan in the Final Four because of there's just too much. There's too much. All right? Where I call into question your 13-0. There's too much, as opposed to calling into question Florida State's 13-0. It's too much. And who'd they play in the non-conference? East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, right? UNLV, which, by the way, in its home field lost. I mean, Boise State fires their coach, and they win the Mountain West. Okay, great. Andy Avalos, gone. Right? Everybody else, okay, here we go. I got to give him great. I got to give him a lot of credit. Give him a lot of credit for that.
Speaking of giving a lot of credit, I want to quickly change gears a little bit towards, we'll discuss transfer portal in a second, but I want to just, again, I don't know if we've discussed them a lot, shout out I want to just shout out the Penn State women's basketball team. They play tonight. They're getting votes to be a top 25 team. They lost to the one of the best teams in the nation by a point.
USC.
Juju Watkins. I mean, probably one of, if not the best player in the nation this season.
Lost by a point, had the ball with a chance to win.
Yeah. Like that's ridiculous. And they are currently sitting about 30 or so, which is pretty darn good, if you ask me. That if I'm Keeger, I'm feeling good about my team. I'm feeling positive. So I wanted to just shout them out here. Give a little love to women's basketball.
They deserve it. And I saw Carolyn briefly Saturday, and I said, hey, she's very locked in. Right, as going to the next one, which is West Virginia, as you mentioned. But let's give credit where credit's due. She really felt she had quite a team coming in. So far, they've made it pay off. They're
crushing it, and Krzyzewski and the team are good. So shout out to them. And going to now the transfer portal, which officially today opened up. Some names have been thrown in there. You've got Kyle McCord from Ohio State, Dylan Gabriel. You've got a few names kind of now slowly trickling on in. Multiple Utah quarterbacks have entered the portal, which I think is funny.
Because Cam Rising is.
Yeah.
Did Barnes go in?
Barnes just went in officially.
You know what? I watched Barnes against Ohio State when Rising got hurt. He directed a touchdown drive in the Rose Bowl. I think I was sitting in a bar in Orlando watching that. Or was it Tampa? Maybe it was Tampa. I don't know. I think it was Tampa. And then last year when he stepped in against Penn State, he didn't play as well. He did direct a touchdown drive very late. But I watched him this year, and I think that he's a good player and worthy of somebody that he won't solve your quarterback problem.
But he'll be good. You take a shot on him.
He would be good for somebody, no question. McCord, he going into the Ohio State game, watched the tapes. Like, okay, I know I use the old expression tapes. It's just easier instead of saying video. And I thought, well, he's, and I said to Jack, I said, hey, he's a good quarterback. Not great, not very good, but not mediocre either.
Yeah,
I said he's good. After watching him in person, I walked out of the stadium saying, he's good. Not mediocre, not very good, not great. He's good. He's good.
He'll get the job done.
No, and good is not being a good college quarterback is not an insult. Okay, but there's just levels. I mean, he's not Caleb Williams.
Yeah, but he's going to throw you 2 touchdowns and 255 yards, and he'll get the job done for you.
But he also had a couple of receivers that allowed him to get away with mistakes.
Maserati Marv.
That allowed him to get away with mistakes. Right? DJ Uiagalelei put his name in last week. It's going to be his third team in 3 years. Really?
He's also apparently looking at the NFL, and he's in a weird place where he entered it, and he can stay and get scouted by NFL teams and stay if he wants to, leave if he doesn't. Other quarterbacks include, I believe, Cam Ward from Washington State, Drew Pine from Arizona State.
Cam Ward, I want to say I understand. And the same thing, to a point I understand DJ. Because you are now entering into a weird area at Washington State and Oregon State.
I believe they're confirmed Mountain West now.
They're going to play 6 Mountain West teams.
For one season.
Right, plus each other.
Yeah.
Right? And then
it's a weird one-off year.
It's a strange one-off. So in other words, for Cam Ward and DJ, I do understand why they would transfer. I'm just saying that's three teams, 3 years. But I understand where they're coming from because they're in an odd area out there as to what they're doing.
Alongside that, Riley Leonard for Duke is transferring. I believe he was rumored for Notre Dame. Someone's been rumored for Notre Dame already.
Well, Drew Pine certainly isn't going back.
Yeah. Grayson McCall, Coastal Carolina.
Yeah,
You've got a bunch of others throughout that have announced, I'm leaving here. I believe Tyler Van Dyke at Miami's out. And a bunch of others are announcing that they're leaving. And that's been the big thing, is just the transfer portal is officially open. So players can start officially being like, I'm in the portal now.
Quarterback is different than all the other positions.
Because it changes the entirety of...
No, well, because there's only one. It's like I'm a wide receiver. We play 3 wides. I'm a starter. I'm playing the whole thing. Okay, I can even multiple running backs. We play multiple tight ends. We play maybe an offensive lineman. We happen to play 7 or 8. We rotate in. We're playing 8 to 10 defensive linemen. I'm talking about your personal situation.
Yeah,
quarterback is one.
And I want to discuss that part. So it was announced or talked about last week that Quinn Ewers at Texas is going to be returning for another season. And of course, their backup quarterback is Arch Manning.
Yep.
Huh? Ewers wants to stay for another year, so it means Arch won't play for another year. But there's all this hype around him, and
it's something he's going to have to discuss with his family.
That's going to be a whole deal. Because if he enters the portal, I'm guessing pretty much everyone's going to throw their hat in the ring to get him.
Sure they will, including, by the way, the head coach of the Penn State's opposite number in this game.
They'd take a shot at him.
Who, by the way, his first 3 quarterbacks are all transfers. His backup quarterback is Sanders from Oklahoma State. But I already did the chart. We're okay.
Yeah.
I thought it made Jack laugh.
You know everything.
Jack left. He laughed. That's why I told you it's 21 out of 25 on defense are transfers.
Yeah.
14 of their top 24 on offense are transfers.
Jeez. That's the new age we live in. The transfer portal, you do or die by the portal, baby. And when there are Penn State players that are announced officially that are transferring, we'll talk about them.
Sure.
When that happens, when that occurs. We're not going to speculate on Penn State at the moment because we can always say, oh, we think this, that, or the other, and there's rumors of this guy, that guy. It just opened up. We don't know what's going to happen. There's movement that can happen everywhere. We've seen players be like, I'm committing, and then decommit. Right. And there's a lot of players who we've seen that were commits start decommitting because of coaching hirings. I know Syracuse just brought in the O-line coach from, I believe, Mississippi State, and a bunch of the O-linemen now have decommitted from Mississippi State. And it's like, isn't that interesting? I wonder why that might be. It's almost like the person they wanted to go play for is now the coordinator in Syracuse.
When there's a coaching change, I understand transfer. Mm-hmm. That's not who you committed to.
Yeah.
That's not the, quote, family group you committed to.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt that way about when there's a coaching change, you should be allowed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I'm not big on this jump all over the place stuff, which, look, in today, you have to be able to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I think I have adapted very well.
Yeah.
In this era about understanding NIL, understanding transfer portal, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Always. I've never. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do I think there need to be some parameters on NIL? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think there need to be a couple of parameters on transfer portal?
Of course.
But those I'm talking about common sense stuff instead of the Wild West. When you have, and I realize these are college athletes, so there's not a collective bargaining agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have more freedom on the college level to move than you do in the NFL, sit there and go, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there are situations where it makes sense to leave. Like if a bunch of Tulane players right now want to leave because Willie Fritz just left, I get it.
Totally get it.
Understandable.
Completely get it. If a lot of Duke players want to leave because Mike Elko has left, I got it.
Or Northwestern players after all of the stuff happened.
Yep.
Like we don't want to be associated with this program. Understandable.
Right. Or like, you know what, I need a fresh start, whatever it may be. You know, situations like that. Indiana. If Indiana players want to transfer, Oregon State, hey, Jonathan Smith left, like looking around saying, what do we do now? Washington State's left on an island, so I don't blame Cam Ward for wanting to transfer because it's a strange spot for him to be in. Right? How are you going to be evaluated now? With all due respect, where now you're playing, let's go and play Wyoming, which, by the way, Wyoming, Craig Bowles' team's very good.
Yeah.
That's not a bad team, but it's the perception of who you're playing.
Yeah, you're not playing Oregon, you're not playing Washington.
You're not going to be on national TV to be showcased and the whole deal.
Logical.
And he's a good quarterback.
But if you're
very good.
But if you're Ungalale being like, I want to go to a third school.
Again, but he's got the double whammy. Coach leaves. And Oregon State is
left
right
in the
now.
cold.
They're left on the Pac-2 island. Okay.
I got a question from someone, and we'll wrap up with this. Should the Big Ten be named the Big Ten after this year?
It's a corporate name.
There we go.
I mean, the reason it is, it's always been
a corporate thing.
It's always been an easy answer for me to give.
Yeah.
It's a corporate name.
I think it's just funny.
And I know I've always had the running joke that you don't teach your children through sports. There are 18 schools in the Big Ten. Right?
Yeah.
And
Big 12 has 10 schools. Or did.
And the Big 12 is going to have 16. And the Dallas Cowboys are in the NFC East. I rest my case.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.